Father, not that unusually for people of his generation who had been in the thick of war and come through it physically, at least unscathed, gave up a promising career in the Royal Navy, went to theological college and became a clergyman in the Diocese of Bath and Wells in southwest England. He spent 3 years as a curate in Weston-super-Mare, and then a further 20 as vicar of Long Ashton, outside Bristol. He set aside his early retirement lump sum to pay for my 2 older brothers and me to go to Taunton School. It helped the finances when, to his disbelief, I won a scholarship covering half the fees. I was immediately streamed into the arts rather than science side of the school, and left 4 years later without having taken a single lesson in physics, biology, chemistry, or zoology. Those of us studying arts subjects had to do an obligatory 1 afternoon a week general science course. When I once asked our long-suffering teacher if we could do something useful, like learn about the internal combustion engine, rather than fool around with a Bunsen burner, so that we would know how to fix the kind of second- or third-hand car many of us aspired to own once we had passed our driving test, I was told that practical science wasn't part of the syllabus. I wasn't a big reader and struggled with history lessons, which I recall as mainly memorable for having my sideburns tugged sharply and painfully upwards by the teacher whenever he didn't get the answer he wanted. Perhaps not surprisingly, I found myself concentrating on languages, which I enjoyed, and wondering what other cultures and countries were really like. At the age of 15, I left Britain for the first time and took myself off for 3 weeks to Nordheim, a small town in Lower Saxony, part of what was then West Germany, to stay with a family, learn some German and begin finding out. I went by ferry and train, feeling pleased with the progress I had made until I discovered that in Hanover I had got on the express train to Munich rather than the stopping train that visited all stations on the same route. A kindly guard took pity on the terrified English schoolboy with halting German and told me to get off at the next big town and take the local train back up the line. There were no mobile phones in those days, of course, so I worried that the family who had come to meet me might give up when I was not on the right train. Fortunately, the local train arrived before the one I should have taken from Hanover, and all was well. In Nordheim I sometimes went to the local high school, or gymnasium, with my host, a very kind schoolboy of my age, and helped with English conversation classes. On other days I went travelling with his father, a salesman for industrial bakery equipment, who tried, to his son's distress, to tell me that Hitler had done the world a service by gassing millions of Jews. At least the experience was good for my German. I remember in particular being taken to visit the beautiful medieval university town of Göttingen, which wasn't far away, and the nearby heavily guarded border with East Germany, with its menacing watchtowers every few hundred yards along the frontier that then separated free, democratic West Germany from the communist East. In my last year at school, like other leavers, I signed up for career weekends arranged by potential employers. I joined one generously arranged at Fanham's Hall, a grand house near Ware in Hertfordshire, by what was then Westminster Bank. At the end, when asked to write an assessment of the weekend, I did so, but also cheekily asked whether the bank would like to find me a job in France for the 9 months I would have spare between school and university. I was staying on for an extra term after taking my A-levels to sit the Oxford University entrance exam, and liked the idea of speaking some French and earning a little money. To my surprise, they agreed, and sent me a return air ticket to Lyon. I had flown before, once, in a small biplane linking Cornwall to the Isles of Scilly, but I still remember gazing out of the window of the Boeing 707 at the amazing cloud formations we flew over. Heaven knows why British Airways put such a large plane on such a short route, but it added to my sense of wonder. I spent the first half of 1969 working at the Westminster Foreign Bank in Lyon, and witnessing the end of Charles de Gaulle's political career when he resigned in April after losing a referendum he never needed to hold. Dangerous things, referenda, as my French political friends reminded us to no avail half a century later. For several months I traded English conversation classes for a bedroom in the flat of Bruno Charmeton and his family in Calouire, on the outskirts of Lyon.